Hello, hello, hello. This is episode 62, and I am super happy to be with you. We're going to talk today about lesson 168. This is a lesson that I do not hear that much about in all my years, and there have been many since the 1980s with A Course in Miracles. And it says, "Your grace is given me. I claim it now." Oh my God, that is such a beautiful line. Let's just take that in. Grace is ours. It's a done thing. All we need to do is claim it. And we could stop right there. That is so relevant, so significant, so important, because we disown God, we disown grace, we disown what we are, we disown our innocence, we claim our guilt, we claim our superiority, we claim separation, we claim attack. We don't claim our beingness. Our beingness is grace. Our beingness is wholeness. Our beingness is truth. Our beingness is connection. Our beingness is the isness of life. I told you in the last episode that I recently held a newborn baby. She has no thoughts yet, no complex feelings. She's just in the moment. It's either perfect or she expects to be cared for. So she's rooting around for comfort or a nipple or a connection. And she expects to receive it because she's still in the flow. She's still in the oneness. What creates our suffering if not our thoughts and feelings? My mantra: thoughts and feelings are not truth. Otherwise, they would be called facts. Let's go on with this lesson. God speaks to us. Shall we not speak to him? Well, it's pretty funny because if there's just the one being, there can only be a denial of the communication. What does that mean? People say, "Oh, I don't hear from God." Well, you are what God is. So do you not get a nudge to speak? Last time we talked about those lessons and the chapter 2, where we're told, "I'll go where you send me. I'll speak to who you tell me to, and I'll say what you would have me say." Well, those are words from the Course, updated from me just now, paraphrased. But we get an impulse to go somewhere. We get an impulse to say something. We get an impulse to speak a certain words. But then we claim it's not from God. How do we know? Course tells us if it's an attack thought, it's not from God. Well, what determines whether it was an attack thought? It wasn't loving. By whose interpretation. Loving meaning felt good. Loving meaning felt like you were extending. But sometimes God tells us to be his instrument for no, not that. Don't touch that child. Don't hurt that dog. Now, those sound like altruistic, so we would make an exception to that. But there would be no drama in life. There would be no play. We wouldn't have life as we had it if there were not these interactions that look unloving. But maybe it's like the weather. We don't say a hurricane is unloving, but there's destruction. People get hurt. People would say it's not nice if someone did that kind of destruction, but it's part of nature. I know this isn't exactly fundamentalist Course in Miracles, but I'm sharing what leads to a more loving space for me. If I see myself as God's messenger, I actually do my very best. If I see myself as a separate being, not good enough, imagined unworthiness, guilty, angry, hurt, what about you? Do you do your best when you treat yourself with those constructs underneath that you're separate, personal self? If it's impersonal, then we are not personally doing anything. We're just instruments. I know this is radical. I could get fired, and so be it, because this is more and more my truth. So you'll have to let me know, Lynn, if this is, or Dove, if this is too far out of what's acceptable. But this is where I am. I am one with the one. I have the grace of God within me. Everything I do or say is in the script, 100%. None of these exceptions like I did so much forgiveness, so I didn't have to get in the accident after the movie. It's all in the play. You either were there or you weren't there. It seems like we're the choosers. And of course, wants us to think that so we can start elevating our practice and start stepping out of that place where we see ourselves as separate. So while we are separate, we need forgiveness, we need choosing again. But if we are not separate and we are not personal selves, then there is no chooser. I know for some people that sounds like bad news. It's really great news. It's such great news because you can relax and stop second guessing. I promise you, you will still do your very best to be kind and loving because everything reflects the one being. It feels like we're choosing to be better, to do our very best, but actually, we're just all the while being instruments of the one. So we can talk back, not talk back, but we can talk, well, we can talk any way we want to the oneness, but it's the oneness talking to us while we're talking to the oneness. There is only one. But I love this. God is not distant. He makes, she makes no attempt to hide from us. We try to hide from the oneness and suffer from deception. That is so right on. God is entirely accessible. We are loved. There is no certainty but this. Yet this suffices. Taking away the he and the sons, it says, the oneness provides love forever. But here we get to the great part. When our minds are asleep, what does that mean? That means when we believe we're separate, solid, personal beings, we're still loved because it's God's dream. That it doesn't say that there, that's me. And when our mind awakes, we are still loved with an ever, never changing love. So here, the phrasing is still two, so I'm not as good with it, but we can turn it around. First it says, if you but knew the meaning of his love, hope and despair would be impossible. Well, let's just take it a slight bit further, because remember, this is still lesson 168, and we're getting to 365. So we're not all the way there yet. And so this is progressive. Of course, in Miracles is progressive. The non-dual is direct. Let's go directly there. If you knew but the meaning of oneness, hope and despair would be impossible. Now, isn't that interesting? Even hope would be impossible. So in India, they say that hope and goals are your way of saying what you're not okay with right now. Isn't that interesting? I heard that from a teacher in India, Ramesh Balsekar, 1995. Still remember it because it was that significant. We have ways of talking about what we refuse to accept. Excuse me, I'm just going to pick up my alarm. I am making a habit of dropping my alarm. Here we are. I'm back again. Imperfection is totally fine. There's no such thing as even more perfect. I was supposed to drop my alarm to show you that it's fine, to show me it's fine. There are no mistakes. All is planned. His grace, his answer is to all despair, for in it lies remembrance of his love. Would he not gladly give the means by which his will is recognized? His grace is yours by your acknowledgement, and memory of him awakens in the mind that asks the means of him whereby its sleep is done. So I love that this lesson talks about the mind that sleeps. So those of you who've been arguing with me on the last videos, or maybe all of them, when I talk about the drama and the made-up world, A Course in Miracles says we're just sleeping. Think about your dreams at night. Anything can happen. You can be walking on the moon. You can be, using shields and swords and be in medieval times. It's all okay. And then you wake up, and hopefully you don't judge the dream and judge your behavior. Well, we can do the same with this life. We can live it as we are being pulled, pushed, directed to be in the drama and enjoy every moment, just like we do in dream. In dream, we come out rested. In dream, the body restores itself for yet another day of action, of feeling, of thoughts. But let's not make feelings and thought truth. Let's decide, as this lesson says, let's claim it. Let's claim truth. Today we ask of God the gift he has most carefully preserved within our hearts, waiting to be acknowledged. This is the gift by which God leans to us, lifts us up, taking salvation's final step. Well, the final step could be here today. Can you imagine if you are being held in the arms of the God that you imagine, sweeping cobwebs from your sleep? And if you like human holding more than the imaginary God, I am reaching my arms out and holding you, comforting you, waking you up from your sleep to tell you you are one with the one. You are love incarnate. You are grace. You are what God is. You are not limited. You are unlimited. You were not born. You will not die. You are eternal. And that is certainly not the separate self. Request now. That's very important. Request now. We're being asked to claim. We're being asked to request. In other sections of the book, we're taught that all we need is willingness. All of this is just about waking up to what's true. God doesn't give us a new, better self. We have always been unlimited, free, eternal, consonant, unlimited, without time and space and a solid body. That's the us. That's the energy of oneness that's not located in a place or a body. It's located within a body, but not limited to that place. It says request, and you'll be given the means. In grace, you see a light that covers all the world, and watch fear disappear. Well, I say fear is only going to disappear if you stop putting it on the altar. Fear is just a feeling. Now, here's something that's not in the course, but remember, the concept of shame was not in the course because the psychologist who wrote this course didn't yet get familiar with the concept that came out in the 80s of psychology describing shame. So I'm calling it imagined unworthiness. And I'm breaking with tradition today and saying the opposite to love is imagined unworthiness. Yeah, there's fear there. And I know the fundamentalists will be disturbed that I even question. I'm not questioning the word of God. I'm questioning just the language that was written down at the time was the best and the closest we could get. So the course is full of fear and guilt. But we now, if it were written now, if it were given to Helen Schuckman now, it would include the word shame or imagined unworthiness. And that is the opposite. It's the most contracting feeling that we have in our spectrum. It's harder than guilt. It's harder than fear because it feels like there's nothing that you can do to make yourself worthy. It's spiritual bankruptcy. One feels entirely worthless. And guess what? That's a mistaken idea. It's a feeling, it's a thought. It is in the category of mistaken ideas that children come up with because they are attempting to feel better and have some control over what's going on. So they say, oh, it's me. All children blame themselves. And so it's a natural consequence of thinking that's true because you've been thinking it a long time. Children can't afford and don't have the brain power to believe that their parents or the world is off. So it is simpler, easier, and makes sense from their limited brain power to think it's them. But it's a mistaken idea. Children think that there are monsters under the bed. Children think there's a tooth fairy or a Santa Claus, and they believe that we are unworthy. But it's a mistaken idea. Now we go to what now remains, that heaven be delayed an instant longer. What is still undone when your forgiveness rests on everything? Yes, there's nothing to forgive because it's all mistaken and it's all planned by the one. And there's no separate being, there's no personal being. It's a new and holy day today, for we receive what has been given us. Our faith lies in the giver, not our own acceptance. Oh, I love this. It's the one being. We only need to know what we are in truth. And then actually, faith is a step away from knowing. When we don't know, we have faith. But right now, we can know. We can live as though we know until we know. Truly, that's a very useful step. In a way, that's what faith is. Faith is acting as though you know until you know. Then it says we acknowledge our mistakes and all error, and we lay them down and rise in gratitude and love. Then the course lesson speaks of His will. His will is our will. We have one voice, one word, one love. Your grace is giving me, I claim it now. I come to you, and you will come to me. I am you. I paraphrased that last part. Thank you, everybody. Namaste.